Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. The OCG just got their new Forbidden and Limited list for, like, a week from now. And it is, pretty interesting. Now, I'm going over the OCG ban list because it gives us an idea as to what would apply for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, what could be some of the changes to look forward to in the future, some things like erratas and what have you, because most of those are going to happen first and foremost in the OCG. But it also gives us an understanding of what the TCG could have. I don't play in the OCG. I don't think anyone realistically watching me does continually play in the OCG or primarily plays in the OCG. And so because of that, yeah, this is mostly just to kind of like look for what currently is happening in the OCG and what that kind of entails. Now let's quickly look at what the metagame looks like for the OCG. Alright, and here is a pretty expected breakdown for the OCG, with Fire King and Snake Eye Fire King being the two most popular decks. Now, we noticed that, I've noticed in the TCG that Snake Eye, more pure Snake Eye, is a lot more prevalent in the TCG than it is in the OCG. And the main reason for this is because Max C. Being able to play around Max C makes Fire King a lot better, right? So a lot of the lists that you will see are playing multiple Skyburns, multiple of the of Fire King islands and stuff like that, to basically give them the ability to play more heavily around Snake Eye, or around the Roach, right? Now, notably, this is not Snake Eye Fire King. This is a pure Fire King build that we just looked at, but most of the other Fire King decks just in general will be playing at least 2 copies, or at least 1 copy of Skyburn, and then 1 to 2 copies of the islands and stuff like that, to give them the ability to kind of play through the Roach a little bit more, because, hey, normal summon Ponix, grab Skyburn, gives you the ability to, with a few hand traps, kind of slow the opponent down enough, and kind of do just enough off of that. Then, of course, we have, like, a regular Snake Eye list, pretty standard here. Nothing really too notable. They have the new card that was just released as well, the new, like, Flomberg kind of pivot card. So, yeah, there's that. We have Voiceless Voice, you know, full combo, ends on multiple negates, ends on some pretty good interactions with, like, 1-card combos and stuff like that. Pretty decent. And then Tempai Dragon, which you might not know what this does, but it's basically just an OTK deck that's actually good. Think of, like, Numeron, when Numeron was pretty good in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, except it's in a best of 3, and it's mostly because it can play, as you can tell, lots and lots of hand traps. So basically, you just stop your opponent from playing the game, and then you do your 1-card combo, which is an OTK, and you can do most of that through Nibiru, because most of it happens in the battle phase, and so because of that, it's very difficult to disrupt. And then Kaiser Colosseum as well, and stuff like that in here, to just kind of slow the opponent down and basically prevent them from playing the game until you can OTK them pretty easily. So, looking back at the changes, the Forbidden and Limited list, we can see here there is an errata just immediately. Summon Sork is a pretty insane card. If it's Link summoned, you could special summon a monster from your hand in defense position to your opponent's zone this card points to. So you give that to your opponent. And then you can target a face-up monster this card points to. Special summon a monster from your deck in defense position with the same type as that monster to a zone this card points to, but its effects are negated. And that's it, right? Which is, it doesn't sound all that crazy, but notably, it does 2 things. One, it gives your opponent a card, which can shut off things like Imperm, it can shut off Evenly Matched, it can shut off Lightning Storm, it can shut off a whole bunch of, like, options, right? And you could potentially even give them, like, a Floodgate, like, I don't know, what is that name? Ibly. Right, so you could give them Ibly and then special summon, like, Mathmech Circular. Don't do that, but you could, in theory, because those are the same types, right? But the new text says now you can only use one of this effects. You can only use this card's name once per turn, Dear Lanta. The effect of this card's name once per turn. If this card is link summoned, you could special summon a monster from your hand in defense position to your opponent's zone. This card points to. Now, notably, more or less that's the same thing, right? However, it does change. The effects of the opponent's monster are also negated. So, notably, this means that, like, triple attack isn't going to trigger if you give your opponent a monster. Like, for example, I don't know, a gimmick puppet, which you could do. So, yeah. Had you, like, given your opponent a gimmick puppet, which I believe triggers an effect to lock you out of special summoning, right? That's not going to trigger like a triple attack or something along those lines. Then you can special summon a monster of the same type as that monster from your deck in defense position whose effects are also negated. And if you do, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except for monsters of the same original type that were summoned as the same original type as the monster summoned from the deck. Now, notably, this is not too bad of a change. I don't know if this will actually change all that much, or if Summon Sork will be just, like, not playable. It is a Link 3, that means that it is a bit of an investment, but with that being said, it's still a free body onto your field, and while it does lock you into a specific type, Cyberse doesn't care. This is one of those things where I feel like Cyberse in particular is going to abuse this heavily, and basically every other type probably won't play it, but there you go. There's that. Pretty interesting errata, and interesting to see that this card is the card that comes back, as opposed to the myriad of other interesting cards. Don't know why we got this errata, but okay. Moving on, we have Girsu, the Orcus Mech Knight, we have Supreme King, Dragon Darkworm, we have Rite of Aramasir, we have Infernity Launcher, and we have Change of Heart, all going to 3, which is kind of crazy. Mostly because of Change of Heart. Change of Heart is such a silly thing. Currently we have it at 2 in Master Duel, which I think is a bit weird. But yeah, Change of Heart is fine now. Really not something you would have expected even like a year ago, maybe 2, right? But at this point, yeah, it's kind of not all that crazy. Rite of Aramasir was limited for some reason. I don't even know why it's limited in Master Duel, but it is. So, you know, there's that. Infernity Launcher, I have no idea why this card was realistically limited for as long as it was. It's still at 1 in the TCG. I don't know why. What are we doing with this card? What is so scary that we are doing with this card in particular? Don't know. Konami's just scared of it. Darkworm, this card was at 2. Still. I didn't even know that. And then Girsu was also at 2. Kind of silly. Now it's at 3 everywhere. Fantastic. Love to see it. Moving on. We have new semi-limitations, which I'm going to... We have some things to talk about. First of all, Ib, the World Chalice Justicar. Sure, most people were playing it at 1 anyway. It going from 1 to 2 changes nothing. The fact that it's banned currently in the Master Duel is likely to change. There's no errata. It's just been power crept, which is surprising. This card is absolutely insane. And when you read it, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. I'm not going to read it, but yeah, you can read it on your own. There's no change. There's no errata or anything like that. It's just a good card now. SP Little Knight is going from 3 to 2. Why? I don't know. The OCG is a bit strange when it comes to things like that. This is a nonsensical hit that does literally nothing. No one is playing 3 copies. I have never seen 3 copies of this card. Mostly because it's expensive. At least in the TCG. I haven't really seen any deck lists in the OCG that have run more than 1 copy of this card. I have no idea why SP Little Knight is at 2. This feels like a mistype. It feels like they just misclicked. They're like, oh, what about SP Little Knight? And they're like, 2. Or like, you know, they missed the 1. They were just like, their finger was slightly more to the right. So it hit 2 instead of 1. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. That's just comedy. High Avatar Kieran is also going to 2, along with Snake Eye Ash. Obviously, as we mentioned previously, best decks right now, Fire King, Snake Eye. Therefore, yeah, minor hits to these guys. Would have been nice to see bigger hits and stuff like that. But alas, there you go. Then we have Kaiser Coliseum going from 3 to 2. All of these basically do nothing. These are nonsensical hits. To be fair, Kieran and Ash are minor consistency hits. However, Fire King Snake Eye was mostly playing 2 Kieran anyway, so that doesn't really change anything. Snake Eye Ash going from 3 to 2 doesn't really change anything. So far, basically nothing has happened. This ban list has changed nothing, right? However, it gets funnier because Pot of Extrav is going to 2. Why? Don't know. Couldn't tell you. Very, very strange. Let's look at the rest of these. Next up, we have Tidal, Ruler of, or Dragon Ruler of Waterfalls. This is currently at 3, I think, in the TC, or in Master Duel. Yeah. It's going to 1 in the OCG. It's still banned in the TCG, which is kind of interesting, but I do expect in the TCG specifically, this card probably going to 1. This isn't really going to change much. Maybe. I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, it'll help tier. It won't. It doesn't do anything. Yeah, this card can absolutely come back. All of the Dragon Rulers can come back. They're not going to change anything. And I think the Master Duel experiment showed that. We literally have full power, all of the Dragon Rulers, and it did nothing. Literally, it did nothing. Actually, I think one of them is limited in some capacity. I don't remember, but they haven't done anything, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, here is the first notable hit. Wanted! There we go! From 30 to 1. Now, this is mostly just a consistency hit, but I think with Snake Eye in particular, this is probably the best hit that you could do without entirely killing the deck and forcing a whole lot of people to, like, lose a whole lot of money on this deck that they just spent a lot of money on. So this is likely to also be what happens in the TCG. Because it's not killing the deck, it hits consistency, it's still playable, it's still probably the best deck, and it still gets to do all of its crazy end boards. But it doesn't entirely make it, like, unplayable. This is one of the most insane cards. First of all, it allows you to play around roll. Second of all, it allows you to search out your main combo starter. And third, and most importantly, it also gives you an additional draw. Like, I say that that's most important, but it is, like, the thing that pushes it over the top, right? So because of that, it's just insane consistency for your deck and insane, like, levels of playmaking for you. And so because of that, I do like seeing it go to 1, and yeah, this is pretty nice. Likely to happen in other lists. Maybe the TCG gets a little bit more aggressive with some things, like maybe actually limiting Snake Eye Ash, but honestly, I would imagine similar hits. Kieran is probably not going to 2, but Snake Eye Ash is probably the limitation along with Wanted. So there you go. In Master Duel, I think things will be very different. Notably, Ash is an SR. Now, Konami is pretty hesitant to hit any cards that are SR or UR. However, because Snake Eye Ash is such a key card for the strategy, and it wasn't a UR, I'm almost certain that this card in particular is likely to be limited on the next list. And I'm certain that Konami is also thinking of that same capacity. So because of that, because of the Duelist Cup, because of all of that stuff, this is likely to be limited in some capacity. I would imagine just straight to 1 in Master Duel, and that's probably going to be the only hit, I would imagine, for the time being. Obviously, when Snake Eye becomes as problematic as it is, or continues to be as problematic as it is, there's likely to be another hit. But this is going to be the first hit, and that's pretty self-explanatory through the just the rarities. Moving on, we have Tikaboo going from 2 to 1 in the OCG. Yeah, sure. Here is the full changes. I don't know. The OCG does stuff. I've never really seen an OCG ban list and been like, wow, that's going to change something. It very rarely does. Most of the time with the OCG, new sets are what change the metagame, and for the most part, the metagame will remain the same, and people will play the same deck until literally Konami actually kills it. Yeah, that's basically it. So I would imagine Snake Eye is going to be prevalent for the entirety of this year, as well as the Fire King deck as well. Even with these limitations, they're basically negligible. So there's that. You can play another Original Sinful. You can play another, Poplar or another Oak or something like that in your Snake Eye list. So it's not really going to change anything. I don't think this changes much of the top decks. I think, however, with all of the limitations kind of put together, it means that Voiceless Voice and Tempai and all of these other decks that are already doing fairly well are likely to continue to do well and maybe take up slightly more of that pie chart. And if we're actually looking at the metagame in the OCG, it's fairly decent, with the Fire King and Snake Eye stuff taking up, yes, the fair, a fair chunk, right? About about a 30% of the metagame. It's not terrible, right? It's not tier 0. It's not insane. It's not something that you need to, like, emergency ban or anything like that with the small limitations, while also not really limiting anything else. Maybe Kaiser Coliseum from, like, Tempai and stuff like that, but not really hitting anything else from any of the other decks means that likely the metagame diversifies just a little and kind of makes a healthier metagame. I think overall the metagame in the OCG, though, is pretty decent, and yeah, I like these limitations for the OCG in particular. However, if they were to be in Master Duel, I would cry, just because I don't want to play this format. But there you go. That's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like this very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.